to get away with that, considering it's unsafe. But the same example with Heihachi. How many Heihachis get away with just mixing down back 2 and demon uppercut? Top 5 hardest. I mean, you know how I feel. I feel Kazuya is the hardest character in the game. Let's use a preset. So Kazuya, like, his most important attack is a just frame. So that's inputted in 1/60th of a second, down forward +2. So that's your key attack. It's a true just frame. And then, you know how high the execution skill is. Weiwu is alright. But you need really good movement to make use of that electric. And then while standing cancel is among the hardest stuff you'll do in this game. Very difficult. And then, you know, block punishing with electric is a nightmare. There's a reason why you see a lot of Mishimas punish 1-1-2. Not with electric, but with 1-1-2. It's because the block stun is so tricky to get correctly, the punish. You can't buffer electrics on block and in animations. And that's why it's so difficult to do down for 2 electric. And why it's so difficult to do a block punish with electric. So execution-wise, it's torture. But what's the But execution is not the most difficult aspect ever of a character. It's strategy. And with Kazuya, you're always forced to respect your opponent. You don't have big evasive stuff. You block, you duck, you sidestep, and then you punish. So matchup knowledge is key. And then you need to outsmart your opponent with constant hard reads, because you're so unsafe. This is so unsafe. This is so unsafe. They just step to the left and you die. You have very, very defined weaknesses. You have very bad low commitment. Like poking. It's just not good. The low commitment is kind of weak. What's strong is the big commitment, right? But it's all beaten by step to the left. So you need hard reads constantly on your opponent. In my opinion, Kazuya is 100% when you win, you outplayed your opponent. There's basically no cheese with the character. This is cheese, but outside of that, there's no cheese. Kazuya is always gambling with his own health bar. For not even gigantic reward. So strategy-wise, execution-wise, I think he's #1 difficulty. I know people are gonna say I'm biased because I'm a Kazuya main, but I do try and see these things objectively. So if anyone disagrees, just let me know why you disagree. But I would say he's #1. #2 difficulty. I would have said Heihachi just a couple of months ago, but the more I play this character and play against him, the more I understand this guy has like proper pure cheese. Even at the highest level of play, this move is... It's just beyond broken. So you'll check with this, right? -1 on block. Just check with this. And then he has all of the other oppressive stuff. But if you ever make the mistake of eating this 10 frame, he hit confirms and you die. It's so ridiculous. And then demon uppercut. And then I remember a lot of people would tell me like, well, you do realize, you say Heihachi's so difficult, but how many people do even block down back 2 on reaction? So a lot of Heihachis, they get away with, it's a little bit of this pole scenario where a lot of pole players get away with Death is Demo Man, where you shouldn't really be able to get away with that, considering it's unsafe. But the same example with Heihachi. How many Heihachis get away with just mixing down back 2 and demon uppercut? So Heihachi can't be the second most difficult in the game. But he is super difficult, don't get me wrong, but he's not the second most difficult. So in my opinion, Kazuya is the hardest in the game. And then I would probably say it's Steve. Second hardest. Steve basically rewards also Tekken fundamentals. Hardcore timing. You outsmart your opponent in timing. You get a read on his patterns, and you back one him. So movement, you have better timing, just like a real boxer. To be honest, you read your opponent's timing, counter it. You know, it's all about timing. In terms of execution, it is pretty up there with all of the cancels he has. But of course, I mean, there's a lot of execution on Steve. But Shiro, of course, this is the hardest staple in the game. That's the hardest staple in the game. Only rivaled by Jin's forward 4 staple with the pickup while standing 4. But there's a lot of execution to him. That's his 27 damage, machine gun punches, wall combo. I drop it quite a bit. But a lot of people think there's no execution to Steve, but there's a lot of it. Like for example, this one, where you want to duck in there on block and do this. It's pretty tricky, but that works. Really good. But yeah, Steve, high execution, completely timing-based character. And also a character where it's a little bit like Jin, where I feel you could play him if you want, like Knee plays him. Just, I mean, if you've ever seen Knee play, it's less is more with Steve. Rolls around with movement and basically back one. That's it. Oh, Miss Mishima, bless your heart. Always a pleasure having you here, and thank you so much for that big support. I really appreciate it. But Steve is a character that really shines if you make use of his entire goddamn move list. It's a bit like Jin. What makes Jin so tricky is not the execution aspect of a character. It's that you have a million attacks that are all so good. It's just that you gotta learn how to optimally use all of it. And Steve just has something for every situation. And he has bad comeback utility, and does not revolve at all around 50-50s in my opinion, unless you are at the wall. So it's basically testing your opponent's patience. Arguably the most honest character in the game as well, in my opinion, together with Kazuya. God, what else is super difficult about Steve? Another really interesting aspect about Steve, in my opinion, that a lot of people don't think of, is that, you know how frustrating it is and that Steve is always safe? Like, most of his stuff is very safe. Like, oh really? -1, I'm back 1 on block? He's very safe, constantly. You see my frames, right? It's a very safe character. But what he gives you in return is that you are very safe playing against him. Not in terms of timing. He will fuck you up. But if your attack connects on guard, his punishment is very weak. Fastest standing punish is 17. And then... oh god, what's the word here? And then... same for the full crouch. Oh, sorry, full crouch is 18. The launcher. So, that's a really cool trade-off, I feel, with Steve. That I really like. Third hardest character. And, oh, this is where Jin players are gonna love me. Top 3 hardest, in my opinion, is Jin. Jin, just like his father, you need to learn how to do this. You don't really need the while standing tech. Doesn't really need it. As you can see, CD1, for example. Or Weifu, you know, forward free. Just like Kazuya, but less reach. A lot of execution on him. Electric, Waivu, second hardest staple in the game. Yeah. Second hardest staple in the game. But in short, a character where you can't play him. You'll see a couple of Jins who think he's Kazuya, and this was me during Tag 2. I played him with Wave Electric, Demon Paw. Arsenal really loves this, and Hell Sweep. That's how I played him. Huge mistake. Excels at pretty much everything. And it's like when you play Tekken, you never want to be predictable. So with Jin, you really want to mix up the flow of your gameplay. So if you want to, you can fall back to 50-50 for a while, and then you can go into pokes, right? Some of the best poking. And then your counter it utility. Is pretty insane. And that one famously nerfed in Tekken 8, right? But so Jin has a move for every single situation. Be it he wants to counter hit. I would like to chip you out with a low. Down 4. Very evasive. Low risk. -12. Right? I want to chip you out. I want to pressure you with a low. Create momentum. +3. Right? It's my turn. 1+2 uninterruptible. I want a big commitment low to really sway the match now. Really sway the match. I launch you with a low. Force you to the wall. Right? Tricky low. Poke. Low. I want to poke you out with a mid. Arguably the best round ender in the game. You see the reach? Delayable as well. Safe on block. Natural. This move is like perfect. You see the reach, right? Yeah, poke mid. High follow-up. Mid follow-up. Down for 2. Safe on block. -7. Counter it launcher. You know forward 4. Demon Paw. CD1. Forward 3. +2 on block, right? Only on wake up though, right? Very, very strong. And it's just, it never ends. I want an evasive mid. But still safe on block. -7. I have a perfect throw game. I have a broken parry. Laser, cannon. It just, it never ends with this character. He has a move for every situation. But the thing is, it's very hard to learn how to use all of these moves properly. And his punishment is just beyond godlike. Like 14 frame. 14 frame while standing. Easy mode 15 frame. Can 14 frame launch if you do a perfect electric. So what makes Jin so difficult, like he's top 5, but Jin players lose all the time online. And it's because it's so hard to understand how to use his moveset properly. It's so difficult. And the execution is very high. Most Jins, yeah, they just fall back on Demon Paw, Electric, Hell Sweep. But that's just not the way to go about it with the character. So in my opinion, yeah, Kazuya, Steve, Jin. Top 4 difficult. This is maybe where I squeeze in Brian.
Chris 40 sub 2 TMM's Q.
Jax is unleashed. Thank you so much for 31 months. I really appreciate it. Alright, so top 4 difficult is gonna be Brian Fury. This character, among like Tekken veterans, would be considered the hardest in the game for a very, very long time. But in my opinion, Tekken 7 simplified him to an extent where he just can't be the hardest in the game anymore. And it's because Hatchet is too rewarding. It's too rewarding on normal hit, and it's too rewarding on counter hit. That simplified his gameplay a lot. He became more 50-50 oriented, where he didn't really need that because the other stuff is so strong. When a character has such effortless, super Majumba Babongo strong homing, you don't want that character to have a super oppressive 50-50. That's why Kazuya's homing is not that good, and you step him. With Brian, you can't step this character, and he still gets a super oppressive 50-50. And they patched his punishment so much. Also, that was a big weakness. So in my opinion, he's still ultra difficult, but he's not as difficult as he once was. They patched the holes too much in his gameplay. But what makes Brian so difficult? Well, first off, backdash is harder with Brian than it is with most characters due to having this backsway. This one. So you have to do a Korean backdash. A classic proper one. You can't just do a reverse wave dash. So backdashing is very strict with him. And then he lacks the universal check tools, like a typical downward one. He has the 15 frame test patience. And this is the name of a game with this character, by the way. He will simply just test your patience. It's a bit like Julia, where he'll do this, and then it's like, okay, is it my turn? Delay. And he catches you off guard. Same with this. Delay. 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 That's it. He tests your patience. Is he going to end the string or not? And he doesn't do strings like Anna, Nina, or your typical MASH characters, where it's like mid, low, mid. Here's another low. He doesn't do that at all. It's always mid or high with Brian. Always. So it's all about timing and is he done or not. That's it. But doesn't have a universal downward one. Doesn't have a universal downward two. Doesn't have a hop kick. Instead relies on an orbital. That immediately makes a character much more difficult. His jab is also rather weak. So generic poking is kind of weak with Brian. This jab also is very interesting. You see how poor the reach is? And you see how it looks like I'm jabbing to Law's chest when he's standing up? You see? It seems like it's got a lowish hitbox on this high, but it's actually ridiculously high. This jab gets beaten by anything that has a tiny bit of high evasion. This is the only jab in the game that universally loses to all electrics. Also makes him a bit trickier. So again, doesn't really have cheese strings, doesn't have a universal check, has pretty not very good poking, but relies on really cool mind games where you just test your opponent's patience and have them eat a counter hit. Very high in execution. Unbelievably high in execution. Every single combo pretty much relies on a form of cancel. And most generic attacks are quarter circle back, quarter circle forward. It's hard to get really good at getting maximum delay on his stuff. It's not easy practicing that or delaying this. Jet Hopper is not that tricky. But I see a lot of people think there's no execution on Brian or that it's greatly... People exaggerate. They don't. The execution on this character is ridiculously high. If you want to do the good stuff. There's such a huge difference with this guy. It's a bit like Lee, where if you do non-optimal combos, the damage is low. But if you do the optimal stuff, the damage is really high. It's just that the optimal stuff is very hard to do. And again, like, if you think his execution is not difficult, like his Magic 4, you have to transition with a dash jab. Which is not easy. Or you do core circle back to 4. Oh god. Yeah, it's just not easy. So, and again, I haven't gone into the taunt stuff. And this is where I find it funny. I think Frame Whisperer said, the only execution difficulty with Brian is taunt jet upper. And they don't even use it. You don't need taunt. And it's like, really great Brian players, or even your like pretty average high-level Brian, they don't do taunt jet upper. Taunt with Brian is all about this. Taunt at the wall into back 4. That's the taunt. This is taunt. That's Brian's taunt. But this is the goal for every Brian player out there. Force them to the wall, right? Or they recover from a wall combo, and you pressure with taunt. This is actually not bad. +2, 27 damage. But yeah, taunt back 4. A Brian player has to be able to do that. And that's a just frame. That's a just frame. And that's in my opinion, bare minimum to play a high-level Brian. You have to be able to do taunt back 4. And again, it's a just frame. But so again, no real cheese. He outplays you with keep out. You press into my stuff. I outplayed you in terms of timing. You pressed needlessly. You pressed into my stuff. Yeah, it's like people like to say Brian is cheap, but I just don't see it. Oh my god, he's just pressing 3-4. This move is unbeatable. Sidestep. This move loses hard to a sidestep, and then you're free to whiff punish him. So if you lose to a Brian just spamming this, I'm sorry, but that's on you. That's on you. If you think Brian is cheap, start playing him yourself. I swear to God, if you have like, let's say you play Bob and you've reached Mighty Ruler, I personally doubt you will reach that character with Brian. Sorry, that rank with Brian. I doubt you will match your main's rank with Brian. It took me a very, very long time to be able to play Brian properly. And I think that's gonna go for most people. Not a straightforward character in the least. Very unique and rewards very, very strong fundamentals, timing, and galaxy brain mind games. Oh, you saw me do this twice and I never ended it? Blam. Counter it. So that's the 4th hardest character in the game. Top 5. Who is going to get the coveted top 5? This is where I'm actually inclined to go Heihachi, maybe. Yeah, I'm thinking Heihachi, Lee, or maybe Akuma. But Akuma has too much cheese. That doesn't require skill, I think. Yo, John, thank you.
Snake Edge is cheap, best move nerf Brian.
Yes, his best attack. Launching low, unseeable. Thank you so much, John. So top 5 difficult is going to be Lee. I thought a little bit of maybe Heihachi, maybe, but Heihachi explained why he has some cheese. And I was thinking maybe Akuma. Akuma has some of the hardest staples in the game. But let me just explain why Akuma is not top 5 difficulty. That could also be interesting. Because a lot of people are going to think like, well, his combos are so difficult. Oi. Let's see. Oi. God, I never really play Akuma these days. Huh? Oh, that's really hard to do. Jesus Christ. I mean, not too long ago, I did this in a match. Wait, what am I not doing here? I'm pressing 1+2 too early. There we go. What the fuck? You see, I'm not getting the EX cancel. He is, yeah, it might not be worth bringing up, but, you know, he's a character in this game. You know, he's a character in this game. Akuma, definitely a hard character. But that's the thing, he doesn't need to be. You can learn how to do this, the proper death combo, right? I did this in a match like a week ago, but now I can't even do it in practice mode. So what I'm trying to do here is two Hadouken into down two. Okay, I can't even do down two Hadouken. Into another cancel into back one. That's how you do this combo as safe-ish as possible. But they put this in. Right? They put that in. And that's because they felt everyone should be able to do these combos, right? So where you had to do jab, DP, like complicated stuff, just do this. More damage, no execution. So that's the thing, like, Akuma used to be really difficult execution-wise, and he still is at the absolute highest, you know, tournament level. He still is, because you wanna stay safe. You don't want to try and mix up your opponent with this. If this is ducked, I die, right? Or blocked. So I want to do this. Jesus Christ. You want to do this. You want to drop the combo over and over. Am I better on player 1 with this shit? I am. Wait. There we go. Seems like it's pretty hard, my friend. Yeah, for someone who doesn't play Akuma, yeah, it's gonna be hard. It's a bit like, if you don't play Mishimas, oh, it seems like electrics are pretty hard. Yes. Okay, I'm getting it quite a few times here. So the reason you want to do that at the highest level is because this on block. Oh my god. +5, right? So there's a huge distinction between that and this. This is unsafe on block, and the hard version is +5 on block. So what happens is that if you have the execution, Akuma is huge reward, no risk. No risk, huge reward. No, actually, it's so broken that he gets either... If that connects, huge damage. If it's blocked, he gets +7. It's just so game-breaking, broken. But okay, the reason I don't put him in top 5 difficulty is because you don't even really need that shit. You can zone with this. Here's my down 4. Here's my obnoxious jump mix-ups, right? He has stuff outside of that, right? He can't play without that shit. And then if someone's -10, this is no execution. And this is so spammable, this power crush. And again, this is no execution. That's 135 with no execution. Yeah, just can't be hardest in the game. And forward 3, so spammable, 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 spam, spam. Yes, too much BS, too much BS. So top 5 difficult. Yeah, and I explained why I don't put Heihachi there. Lee is going to be top 5 difficult. Lee plays a little bit, like a very, very hardcore version of Asuka. You know, Asuka, you really can't press into her. She'll fall back and do her BS everywhere. It's the same with Lee. You can't go in on him. Like, best keep out in the game. Back 4, down for 2, magic 4. You don't want to press into this guy. But yeah, just like Brian, a counter it God. Tests your patience, like never press into me. Paul is a little bit the same way. Those 3, they're like the 3 juggernauts of like keep out, counter it, in my opinion. Well, Asuka is there as well. Counter hit. Super strong with all of that. But the huge problem for Lee, in my opinion, is when someone has a ton of patience and know not to press into him. Now you're going to have a really, really hard time breaking their guard. Because now they're not pressing into you. So now you gotta try and force them to take damage. And here, slide is some of the highest execution in the game to get quickly. To get an instant slide. So this is something they... I can't even do it on player 1. So this is something they removed for Law in Tekken 8. So we'll see what happens to... I know Lee is going to be in Tekken 8. So we'll see if they simplify the slide input for him as well. I hope they don't. Because this is super high skill expression on a player. You see someone duck and then do a slide. But the really slick Lee players, and they've been playing for years and years, you don't even see them duck. They just insta slide. Referred to as God slide very often. Very high skill expression and completely changes how efficient Lee is. Because he doesn't have much of a 50-50. But if you're really good with that slide, but still that slide is not that rewarding. And the low pokes are not all that. This is borderline seeable. Very problematic. So he doesn't have much of a 50-50. And he doesn't have a safe mid launcher. So when he 50-50s with mids, he goes for something like this. Very risky business. So unless someone's very willing to press into you, where you beat them with timing and patience, Lee really struggles. Difficult game plan. Difficult game plan. And then execution, it's about as high as it gets. Even basic combos rely on a lot of cancels. Basic combos, almost any type of launch you get, there's a really tricky conversion. Most famously this one, very tricky to get. So very tricky conversions. This one is not difficult. But also, yeah, his 10 frame punish, one of the best in the game. But that's a fucking just frame. That's extremely hard to do consistently. Extremely hard to do. Miss trap. There are actually elite players who will hit this every time. But this is another just frame. That works on hit or on block. Gigantic amounts of execution. Very tricky game plan. Very tricky game plan. So Lee for me is top 5 difficulty. Okay, I thought that was a good talk. That was a good one.